Because the Pakistani car owners steer blindly every day, the steering shaft of the steering gear is easy to break. They can't buy affordable accessories in their local area. In order to reduce the loss this time, the owner drove to their traditional repair shop to ask the master to see if it can be spliced. The steering gear of the truck in front of him was broken due to oversteering. In this case, Fu first disassembled the steering gear. Use a hexagonal wrench to loosen the end cover screws so that the broken steering shaft can be separated separately. Because the Rowan head cannot be directly welded, Fu is going to use a copper shaft rod for splicing. Before repair, the length of the Rowan head must be recorded first. The main purpose is to prevent the length from shortening after repair. Under the premise of docking with the elbow, the flat exercise surface must be cut flat and smooth. Then the axis is drilled through the positioning drill to prevent the twist drill from drilling. This whole position is the key to docking with the shaft. In order to make the superimposed force surface of the two larger, Fu will use half of the elbow diameter data to continuously expand the axis hole position. In this way, the forces on both sides can be balanced. After the hole is completed, the inner hole cutter is used to cut and expand the hole. The hole is smooth so that the hole diameter meets the use requirements. Because the hole position is not convenient for cutting threads with a turning tool, the master uses a tap with the same number for processing. In this way, the inner thread of the thread can be quickly processed to improve the strength of the overall splicing of the thread head. After the master simply records the hole depth, the broken thread head needs to be measured. The sum of the two is equal to the length of the shaft rod that needs to be cut. When a new thread head needs to be reproduced, the shaft rod with a larger diameter needs to be trimmed and cut. The head is processed with a threaded docking boss to avoid gaps between the two. After the exterior seam fully meets the docking requirements, the surface of the boss needs to be processed with an external thread of the same pitch. In this way, the boss can be embedded in the B-axis hole. After the residual hair on the surface is removed by the staggered tool, the master needs to cut off a layer of the surface of the shaft rod according to the length of the broken thread head. In this way, it is convenient for subsequent reproduction. After the master simply marks the required length, it needs to be cut off and separated from the shaft. The shop does not have a high-end slot knife, so when using the Rowan knife for cutting, the master can only widen the entire cutting surface as much as possible to facilitate the knife head to reach inside and cut the two. After the simple processing of the connector is completed, it can be docked with the steering shaft. In order to prevent leakage inside the hole, the master also needs to use the pipe to completely tighten it. The main purpose is to fit the end faces of the two to avoid changes in the length of the splicing. When the steering shaft cannot be turned at all, there is no reserved groove in the early processing. The joint needs to be cut twice. By increasing the area of the joint, the strength of the joint is higher. After the master simply consumes a piece of the joint, the elbow head needs to be cut for the whole arm. According to the appearance of the original thread, the part of the elbow splicing is removed layer by layer. Only in this way can the original nut be fixed. Then the original thread pitch is measured with the thread gauge to avoid the master's processing of the external thread is not accurate enough. Although they do not have a high-end vertical air machine tool, they are experienced and have 8-level skills. Quasi-zero error after the master used Luo Wengui to compare and measure again the carved Luo when reached the original factory standard. So the broken steering shaft of the steering gear was repaired simply. What do you think of this technology?